And greetings once again to our internet congregation. Thank you so much for coming our way. Thanks for stopping by. This is Hill Country Bible Church, Canyon Lake, Texas. If you live in the area, we'd be happy to see you in person. Worship is at, breakfast on Sunday morning, 9 o'clock. Sunday school, 9:30. Worship is at 10:30. We'd love to see you. If you don't like guitars, don't bother to come. I shouldn't have said it. That's all we've got. We got guitars. We need a bass. Somebody said we need drums. No, this room is not big enough for drums. We'd be blowing the back windows out. We might need a bass. We used to have a bass player, a young man who played the bass and moved to Washington State. It's too far for him to commute, so we just have guitars. But we have the Lord, so we make out all right. I want to speak to you this morning on Matthew 24 is knocking at the door. Matthew 24 is knocking at the door. Would you turn, please, to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24. And beginning with verse 1, would you stand, please, in reverence to the reading of God's holy and sacred word. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See you not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. And he goes on, I'm not going to read the rest of it. They ask for one sign, and he gives them a whole laundry list of signs. We're going to look at several of them. My cross is wrong, right? Crooked. So I don't want to be crooked on the internet. Not that there's nothing crazy on the internet, right?
No.
Let us pray. Lord, bless this presentation. I pray for your leadership, your guidance, your anointing, and challenge us, Lord, as we see the prophetic signs of the times being fulfilled all around us. In Christ's name, amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Jesus wasted no time in answering the question, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of it? He'd already given them one in verse 2. Jesus said unto them, See you not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And of course, in later on in the sermon on the Olivet Discourse, later on in this chapter, and also in the Gospel of Luke, he says that the city will be burned, the temple will be destroyed, and a generation will not pass until this happens. 40 years later, the fury of Rome fell on the pride of Israel, the city of Jerusalem and the temple, and it was torn to the ground. Titus, the commander of the 10th Roman Legion, gave explicit orders, do not destroy the temple. I want it left as a sign of my goodwill and my benevolence, my understanding. Well, it just so happens that Titus had hired a large group of Syrian mercenary soldiers, and they hated the Jews with a passion. And when they got to the temple, they just went crazy with rage, and they set it on fire. Titus himself, the commander, came and was trying to push them back. Stop, don't do this. And they just ignored him. And the inside of the temple was plated with gold. Everything was gold. The gold melted, and it ran into the cracks between the big boulders. Now, when Jesus said, there shall not be one stone left upon another, don't think of little rocks like this. Think of big boulders that are 15 feet long, 8 feet thick, 7 or 8 feet from top to bottom, weighing tons, several tons each. And it was no small task to disassemble every stone from the one on top. But over the next several decades, there were people out there chipping away at those boulders, trying to get to the gold, and they did a pretty good job of it. The temple eventually was leveled in express disobedience to Titus, the Roman general. He screamed at them, he fought at them, and they ignored him. Why? Because Jesus Christ said it was going to happen. Okay, that's a sign in itself, a miraculous fulfillment of his prophetic statement about the destruction of the temple. And then they ask him for one sign, and he gives a whole bunch of them. And he says, for example, in verse 5, "For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." I've had someone over the last month or two tell me that he is the Messiah. He's alive today. He's 29, 30 years old. And I've met several people like that over the years. And there's this guy in Laredo, Texas. He's got several thousand followers. He says he is the Christ, and he is also the Antichrist in one person. And people believe him. And then we've had the Jim Jones cult, and over the last 2,000 years, there have been hundreds of people who have come forward and claim to be the Messiah. They have one thing in common: they're all dead. Every one of them is dead. Bar Kokhba came forward in AD 135, gained a huge following, and was leading a pretty good war against the Roman Empire. But then when he started claiming to be the Messiah, the Christian Jews backed out on him, and then the next battle he fought, he was slaughtered and he was killed. Why? It was not the will of God for him to win, because he was not the Messiah. He was a fraud, and he knew it. Then there was all up down through the years, there have been, it not only says, "I am Christ," but it says, there shall be, in verse 11, "many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many." How many remember Father Divine? Remember him? He had thousands of followers, and he was a con artist and a crook. And they're all over the place. Some of them are still alive today, and they're writing books, and they have followings. And the Heaven's Gate, was it Heaven's Gate? The cult, they all committed suicide, and then the Jim Jones, one after another. Elizabeth Clare Prophet, do you remember her? And when Y2K was getting cranked up, oh buddy, that fed the fire. There were hundreds of cults all over America who said, this is going to be the prophetic sign that will bring Jesus back again. So there were hundreds of people who sold everything they had. They invested tens of thousands of dollars in hideouts in the desert and out in Arizona and California and so forth. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. So they were proved wrong. I heard a story on radio of a lady who spent like $400,000 building a underground house out in the desert somewhere, and she was egged on by this con artist. He was getting most of the money, and nothing happened. She blew her whole fortune. Okay, so false prophets, and they're inside the church and they're outside of it. Now, outside the church, they're the cult leaders, like the guy in Laredo and Jim Jones and Elizabeth Clare Prophet and others. But there are false prophets inside the professing Christian community. They're called, well, you call them liberals. I call them progressives, apostates. And see, that is another big, big sign of the times, is the apostasy, the falling away. In fact, let me turn over there and read to you from, if I can find it, just a moment. I'm not ready for this. People out on the internet don't know what's going on. But God changed his mind on me. I wish he'd stop doing that. All right, here we go. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. The Spirit speaketh emphatically that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith. And the word depart is apostatize. They will walk away from the faith, the body of doctrine God has given us, giving heed to seducing spirits and teachings of demons. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, going down to verse 3, forbidding to marry, commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving, so forth and so on. And then in 2 Timothy, also chapter 4 and verse 1, it says, I charge you there before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the living and the dead at his appearing in his kingdom. Preach the word, proclaim the truth, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke. Oh, come on. I'm not going to tell you who that was. I got to turn this thing up. That was a member of our church who knows better. Power off. I can't believe that. That was not my daughter. She has called me a couple of times, and she shouldn't have. It wasn't her. It's somebody you all know and love. But she's out of her gourd today. What time is it? 11 o'clock? 11:40. She knows what I'm doing at this time of the Sunday morning. I'll have to call her after church and say, what is it with you? I'm not going to tell you who it is. Obviously, it's somebody who's not here. So you can narrow it down, look around and find everybody who's gone. One of them. Okay. Preach the word, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. That's what I'm going to do to her. Reprove and rebuke. For the time will come when they, Christian people, will not endure or receive sound, or the word sound means beneficial, healthy, truthful teaching. But after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers who have itching ears. They're wanting to hear what you want to hear so they can give it back to you. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables or unto mythology. That always reminds me of Rudolf Bultmann and his form criticism of the New Testament, which was popular in mid-1900s. The demythologizing of the New Testament. He says it's all myth. You have to strip off the myth to get to the truth. And the resurrection is a myth. The incarnation, the miracles, the Exodus, everything that's miraculous is mythology. To which I reply, hogwash. And he allegorized everything, mythologized everything. And that is what is being spewed from many, many pulpits today, especially in the old line, historic denominational churches. They've been through their seminaries. That was a Freudian slip. They've been through their seminaries, which resemble cemeteries, spiritually. Oh, by the way, this is an example of the apostasy. I was going to tell you about this before I got started. Then the Lord started dealing with me when David was sick. God was ministering to me when you were singing to the congregation. He was telling me, big boy, you're off the rails. I'm changing your story. Aren't you glad you were the catalyst for that? Don't do that again. It wasn't you. I was going to tell you this story. Now I forgot what the story was. What was it? See, that's what happens at this time in life. It was a great story. Now, I completely forgot it. Maybe I'll think of it. Apostasy. I don't know. I lost it. The denominational churches, many of them, have bought into the higher criticism of the Old Testament, which shreds the historical trustworthiness and reliability of the Old Testament. And then all of this Bultmannian stuff and later stuff to come in the New Testament studies. And they simply don't believe that you can trust the Bible. it is simply not factually reliable. Most of the stuff was made up, thrown together, and it's not true. And you must pull out what is helpful, and whatever has existential kick value for you, that's your truth. That's your truth. Maybe not anybody else's, but it's your truth. And they're into that. And that, you cannot be spiritually nourished. You cannot grow as a believer with that kind of pablum, that kind of falsehood. It's not only is it pablum, it's not even real, it's not even true. Okay. So that's why I'm not a member of a denominational church anymore. You know, I had to get out. They walked away, they apostatized from the teachings of this transcendent volume. I apostatized from them. And I feel good about it. Okay. So, false teachers, apostasy. There was something about apostasy I was going to tell you about. Some crazy thing that's going on. Oh, now I know. I knew I'd remember it. I always do. Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Way, way out beyond the left. You know, they're worse than Vanderbilt. I mean, I thought Vanderbilt University was bizarre when I went there. But they were into process theology. At least they believed in some kind of transcendent deity. At Union Theological Seminary, they have this class in God in Nature or something like that. They had a chapel service, and it was a confession of sin service. Do you know who they confessed their sins to? Pot plants. Pot plants. Please forgive us for cutting the grass too short. I guess, I mean, I'm just making that. I don't know what they confess. Please forgive us for not watering the trees. And you know, whatever. That's what they did. They won't come to Christ. They will not believe in the theanthropic divine Christ, the incarnation of God in human flesh. Oh no, that's too far out. But they pray to dumb plants. That is apostasy on steroids. And that's what these young denominational pastors are being taught. Presbyterian, Catholic, Episcopal, Methodist, Northern Baptist. Probably no Southern Baptists are that far gone yet, I hope not. And it goes on and on and on. Okay? Let's see what else happens here. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 24. And let's see what else Jesus Christ says. He says, among other things, he says, verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. That does not mean the catching away of the church. It has to mean the end of the tribulation period, because the church is not going to fulfill the Great Commission that we've been given. You know what the Great Commission is? Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to every living creature. 2/3 of the world has never heard the name of Christ. So we are miserably failing in that regard. How will that commission be completed? During the tribulation period, there will be 144,000 Jewish Billy Grahams. You can read about them in Revelation chapter 7. They will be sealed in their forehead where they cannot be physically harmed. And they're going to preach the gospel of the kingdom all over the world, and it will bring in the greatest spiritual revival and harvest of souls that the world has ever seen. They are going to complete the unfinished task of the church. And then, when they preach the gospel to every nation, the end will come. Jesus Christ will come again at the end of the tribulation period. Another sign, and I don't know where the statement is in Paul's letters. he uses the term storgoi, but he puts the plural on the ending, storgos. Now, storge, he puts storgoi. Storge is family love. Now, you know about eros, phileo, and agape. Agape is at the top of the ladder. Agape is God's kind of love. It's love for those who are not very lovely. Okay? Phileo is friendship love. Eros is erotic love. Storge is family love. It is the natural and normal love that a husband and wife should have for one another. Love for their kids. Kids loving their parents. And, you know, even though I wasn't raised in a Christian home, that was the one missing element in my childhood. I had a wonderful childhood. I thank God for my parents. They were good to me. They were kind. My daddy didn't take me fishing or hunting. He wasn't that kind of guy. He was a hard-working man. But he bought me every addition that I wanted to my Lionel electric train set. Birthday, Christmas. I don't want clothing. I don't want anything. Give me something else for my layout. And when we moved to the north side, brand new house, had a detached single garage. He had a room built on the end. How wide is a single garage? 12, 14 feet? It was that square. And there was a big table in there, and I put my train layout up on the table. There were little tracks going everywhere, and oh man. The whole neighborhood of kids used to come at night. We'd turn the lights off, and the little green and red lights on the switches, and the headlight on the track. Well, it was just fascinating. He did all that for me. I had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. Loving, caring, hardworking, honest, good, honest parents. And they chastised me when I needed it. We were coming home one night. My daddy had a Texaco super service station over on the south side, Nargalita Street. And my mama and I had been there real late, about 10 o'clock at night on Friday night. And we're all heading home, going down Zarzamora Street. And there was a new Tex-Mex restaurant that opened up. And they had the sign, it was in Spanish. And I'd heard all these curse words at school. I was about 7 years old, 8 years old. And I said, do you know what those Spanish words mean? No. I let out a string of cuss words that would, if I repeated those words to you, I would lose my job in a New York minute. And my mother said, young man, where did you learn all that bad language? At school. Well, I'm going to take care of you. Oh, no. I thought I was going to get whipped. No. We got home. She took me to the bathroom. Open your mouth. Why? She got a bar. Remember lava soap? She got a bar of lava soap, hand soap. Wet, put it under the faucet, wet it. Open your mouth. Stuck it in my mouth and worked up the faucet. I'm foaming at the mouth with lava soap. And I was about to regurgitate it. And she said, okay, that's good enough. Spit it out. She said, drink some water. And she said, don't you ever say one of those words again and you'll get more lava soap. You understand? Yes, Mama. Yes, Mama. I never cursed again in her presence. Never. Great set of parents. They loved me. They took care of me. They chastised me when I was wrong. But I knew they cared about me. And they took care, like my sister was 4 years older than me. They bought her a new bicycle. I'm a little brat. I was crying because I didn't get anything. They gave me a $5 bill, which back in those days was like a $100 bill. They said, here, you can buy whatever you want to. Here's a $5 bill. I thought, okay, that's pretty well makes up for it. Then my parents both, my sister was a Christian from early on. My parents were both saved in their later years when my sister grew up, got married, had a child, a little boy named Richard, Ricky they called him. And he died at age 18 months of cancer. And my daddy loved that little boy, his little grandboy. I thought he loved him more than he loved me. Not really, he couldn't. He just was crazy about his grandson. And when he died, I thought my daddy was going to die. And that's when they both came to Christ. That's what it took. That's what it took. And from that point on, our family was even better than it had been. Better than, I was still living at home then. It was still better. It was better than it ever had been. It never had been bad. I never had it bad. I always had plenty of food, plenty of everything. But it got even better when my parents came to the world. So the word storge means natural, normal family love. My family was full of it. But in the Greek text, I think it was one of Paul's letters. He's got the alpha prefix, astorgoi. And it means a dearth of natural, normal family love. Boy, is that being fulfilled today. Almost every day on the news, you have another horror story. What do these women go through all the trouble of labor, pregnancy and labor, and then they have a little girl who is a year and a half, 2 years old, and they starve her to death. And that happened last week. This kid was actually older than that. She was about 5, and she weighed like 16 pounds. And she wouldn't wake up one day. Oh, she and her brother were kept in a closet 16 hours a day. They were both like skeletons. The other 2 kids, who were a little bit older, they were taken care of, but not these 2 kids. They were starved. They were beaten. And the boy is in the hospital. The girl, died of dehydration and malnutrition. And the mother and the boyfriend and her and the grandmother are all charged with murder. Good on them. You hear that stuff all the time. A year ago in Memphis, Tennessee, this young woman and her boyfriend delivered her baby in the apartment by themselves somehow. And he immediately strangled the mother to death. Kept the little baby girl for 2 days. I'm sure he took really good care of her. And the police were saying, "What'd you do with the child?" "I threw her in the river." Mississippi River was right there. He threw that two-day-old baby girl, his own daughter, threw her in the Mississippi River and walked away. And hell is too good for somebody like that. And every day, more and more stuff like this is happening. A couple of kids escaped in South Carolina. They've been held in a horror chamber. No food, no water. They were drinking out of the commode and all this kind of stuff. And one of them, or both of them, got away. They were covered with, feces, urine-soaked clothes. And they went to the neighbors wouldn't let them in. They finally, this elderly lady said, "Stay right there on the porch. You're not coming to my house, but I'll get you some help." She called the cops. And of course, the parents were arrested, and the kids taken away from them. Every day on the news, you hear more stuff like that. So Storge is out the window. It is one of the big prophetic signs of the times. Violence is another one, just miscellaneous violence. In San Francisco, I was reading this documentary on the internet the other night. The entire downtown section of San Francisco, which has bank buildings and office high-rise buildings all over, they're all boarded up. Everybody's working by computer from home, and these big corporations are telling their office people, "Do not go downtown. The office is closed, but we're not going to open it. It's too dangerous. It's too dangerous." And the man who is primarily responsible for it all, Gavin Newsom, is being touted as a presidential candidate. My God in heaven. And the author of that article said, "Guess what, you people in Texas? Austin is right behind San Francisco." So that's 60 miles up the road. All right, and there are many, many other prophetic signs of the times. I think we can comfortably say that God right now is setting the stage for the second advent of Christ. Two more great big prophetic signs. I mentioned them in Sunday school. The migration back in mid 20th century. Jewish people, content to live where they were for eons, for that hundreds of years, all of a sudden, in the early 1900s, they want to go back to Israel. And so they start migrating from all over the world, from all 4 points of the compass. 1948, May the 14th, I'll never forget, I got it wrong one morning. I said May the 15th, 1948. And Mike Williams corrected me. 14th. I felt like, shut up, Mike. He was right. Mike was right. I was wrong. It's so funny. Anyway, May the 14th, I'll never forget. I got it right this time, Mike. I'll never forget. You taught me something, brother. The political rebirth of the nation of Israel, unprecedented in history. And that is the prophetic sign par excellence. The second thing, I want to close with this. 35 years ago, just barely came out to Canyon Lake. I was a chaplain at Walden Square Retirement Community in San Antonio. It was a plush, like an apartment complex, but they had call lights and they had a couple of nurses on duty. And I had a Bible study group there. I had about 40 or 50 people coming. And there were only 170 or 150 really who lived there, so I had 1/3 of the crowd. Wasn't bad. I had a 2-star general. I had 3 or 4 bird colonels. I had an admiral, Navy admiral for a while. I had doctors and lawyers. I didn't have any Indian chiefs. I had 2 or 3 lawyers, a couple of doctors. I had a psychiatrist, a couple of MD, just family practice lawyers. Doctors. I had a lot of professional people, stockbrokers and all this kind of thing. And they liked my teaching. Until I started teaching about Bible prophecy and the prophetic statements in the Bible about a one world government under the Antichrist. And that's when they parted company. And they weren't ugly, but especially the military guys. They were laughing at me. They said, Dr. Watts, you're off the rails. All we've ever done as nations since the beginning of time is fight each other. And you're saying we're all going to get together and have a global government. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. Ha, 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 ha. Guess what? Nobody's laughing about that anymore. Everybody is on the global bandwagon. You've got ministers, theologians, philosophers, university professors, most of the politicians, and even some of the good guys. I'm not going to name this fella. He's a Republican senator. I can't tell you what state. You'll know who he is. I like the guy. He's been very good. But I don't understand why his wife works for the Council on Foreign Relations. And she's, of course, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a globalist organization. Everywhere you look, the military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, one world government. The climate scientists, one world government. The economical people, the economists, one world government. The climate people, one world. That's the solution to every problem the human race is facing. We've got to have a global government. Now, I'm going to end on a Donald Trump note. Do you know why people hate him so much? It's not because he's a smart mouth. Because Clinton was a smart aleck. Okay, and others have been cutting and sharp. He's a little bit more than most, but that's not why they hate him. He used to chase women. What president hasn't? Clinton, JFK, oh buddy. Okay, girlfriends out the kazoo. Okay, they bring all this stuff up. No, Trump is a constitutional nationalist. He is not a globalist. He is not a globalist, and that's why they hate his guts. Because he's going against the flow of the secular, God-rejecting world. And that is what we must stand against, all of this stuff. Well, we have 2 baptisms to perform. I'm excited about it, and leave it on for just a minute. We're going to be very ecumenical, very multicultural today. As per our Constitution and our doctrinal statement, we will baptize people any way they want. Immersion, sprinkling, pouring, and so we're going to be Baptists and Presbyterians on the same day. We've never done this before. I'm excited about it. We're going to immerse Emily, who came to the Lord a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to baptize by sprinkling Lisa, right, Lisa?
Yes, sir.
Lisa, who came to the Lord a few weeks ago. And I'm excited about it. So let's come to a close. We'll sign off on the internet. Thank you for listening. Thank you for checking in. We'll see you next week.